All right. Well, hello, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. I am here with Chelsey Ann Tompkins, who is the author of A Conduit of Light.
Ah!
And we're going to be talking about her author journey, her book, and just comes kind of general fun stuff. So thank you, Chelsey, for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me and thank you for reading it. I
You're
love it.
welcome. You're welcome. Um, so let's just get right into it. So tell us a little bit about what made you decide to want to be an author and kind of what your path to publication was.
Yeah, so I always knew I was going to write something, and it was really more of a time of when and when
Mhm.
I had time to do that. So when my daughter was in preschool for half of the morning, I had this free time. My son was in kindergarten, and I said, I'm going to do something with this time, and it was just time to write. So that's when A Conduit of Light was born. And I did consider reaching out to traditional publishing and starting queries and things like that. But after learning more about self-publishing and just how quick it is comparatively, I
Mhm.
said, I'm just going with this and like let's just see what happens. And I'm so glad I did. Self-publishing is such a, oh my gosh, there's so much to learn, and I'm still learning so
Mhm.
much about it. But yeah, it's so much more fast-paced. And so to get my work out there and to get this, what I hope is a long career going, I needed to I didn't have time to wait for people to
Yeah.
decide if they wanted to take my book or not. So I'm really glad that I did this. Really, really glad.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your writing process. So do you outline, do you plot, do you quilt? What do you do?
Well, I've written 2 books only so far. For A Conduit of Light, it really came together over a couple of years during the pandemic.
Mm.
So it was more just quick, sticky notes slapped on the wall or like notes in my notes app on my phone. I would be driving my kids somewhere and I'd pull over and I'd be like, just a minute, like mom's got to get this jotted down. So a lot of it just came little pieces like that. I did at one point try to outline and really organize my thoughts and everything chapter by chapter, and I am not an outliner. I'm just not. It is definitely flying by the seat of my pants,
Mhm.
sit down that day, and here's what's going on, with the idea in the back of my mind of generally how the story is going. But there are plots in A Conduit of Light and A Bear in a Bond's the second one that I just did not know until I sat down that day and
Mhm.
started writing. There were things I was like, whoa, I'm just as shocked to learn as my readers were and will be, by sitting down and just starting. So definitely more of an organic, just sit down and do it kind of a thing than a real plot type person.
That's kind of a cool way, of writing though. It like you said, it kind of like surprises you and you can kind of just
hmm
like, just like let like, everything flow
It
that way.
I think it has its ups and downs, but it works really well for me. And like you can't see it right now, but my it's just sticky notes. That's it. That's all that's in front of me right now. But it makes sense in my head. I call it organized chaos because it's just like if anyone else sat down here and ever tried to write any of this, they would have no idea, no clue what to do whatsoever. But that's okay because it's like what works for you, right? I don't know
Right.
if I'll always be this way. I hope I could be more organized, as far as like outlines and things like that. I'd love to be able to learn that skill that I don't have right now. But it works so far. So
Awesome. Awesome. So tell us what you enjoy most about writing in the fantasy genre.
oh boy. I've always loved fantasy forever, ever, ever. And so just just as I struggle to read anything contemporary,
Mhm.
for me, it's too real. It's like if I read contemporary romance, I'm like those could be like coworkers or like neighbors. You're just missing the element of escape for me.
Mhm.
And so fantasy is just such a huge part of, you know, my childhood and adolescence and just growing up and, reading Harry Potter and reading, all of those books that we did, us millennials, right? We did when we were younger that were just full of magic and just endless possibilities. I mean, when you write fantasy, there are no limits. You can
Right.
do whatever you want because it's fantasy and it will fly. Same with similarly, like sci-fi is
Mhm.
another genre where that's a similar concept. Um, but there was no doubt in my mind that I would ever write something fantasy, and I've always loved like fairy tales, and I hope someday to do some fairy tale retellings.
I would
And
love that.
it's happening for sure. I do in love with all those old stories, but fantasy was just there was never a question of when I would write it or why I would choose that genre. I just that's solely what I read. And anytime I kind of read out of that genre, I really do struggle. I'm like, okay, these are real people, or like, okay, this is more like sciency kind of fantasy, Chelsea. Get it in your head. It really is a struggle for me because my brain just it just wants to be in a fantasy world anyway.
I think a lot of us can relate to that,
I
especially.
think so too. I mean, that's part of why fantasy romance is just taken off as a
Yeah.
genre because we, are in our age group, we were raised on Harry Potter. We were raised on Chronicles of Narnia and these other fantasy, young adult books, and now we want something maybe a little more mature, but we still
Mhm.
want that magic, that little piece where we get to escape into these fantastical worlds. So I'm right there in you. I'm right in there with all the readers.
Yeah.
I want to just read it and write it.
In fantastical worlds, you definitely hit, obviously, in your novel here for sure, which we'll talk about in a few. So you said that your writing space has a lot of post-it notes. It's a lot of organized
Mhm,
chaos. Is there anything in
mhm.
particular that you have in your writing space that you use when you're writing or that helps you stay focused?
I mean, the post-it notes are, yeah, definitely a must. I actually, the most important thing is my candle. So,
I've heard that from so many people, and I have a candle too. I always need my candle on. They have a new
there's,
one at Bath and Body Works that just came out. It's called Book Loft. And
oh
it
no.
yes,
What
it
does
sounds
it smell like?
I don't have the notes, but while you're talking, I'm gonna
Ah,
look.
dang. I mean, I guess I need to go. I need to
I
go.
know.
I love Bath and Body Works. Don't even get me in there. My gosh. I take my daughter in there. She's just as excited.
Funny.
But the reason I use the candle, not only just for aesthetics, right?
Right.
It's like this flickering, beautiful color flame, right? But my husband works from home and he tends to wander. That
Mhm.
is how when he's a computer engineer, and he tends to wander as he's processing through some kind of problem he's working on. And guess where he comes? so, so I learned early on in doing this that I was going to have some way to stop that man from interrupting my train of thought. And the most polite way I could think of, besides like a light on the door that's red, right? Was a candle. If the candle is lit, we've established this. The candle is lit.
Love that.
You are not to come over here. You are not to say anything to me unless it's like some
Right.
important information or something. And he rarely breaks the rule. Occasionally he does. I slap him on the wrist and get out of here. But but it's really essential. And what's interesting about it is I'm a very scent um processing kind of person.
Yeah.
And so like writing A Conduit of Light, I used a single scent of candle.
And what
And
was
now anytime it's called eucalyptus wreath. And
Oh,
I can't find it anymore. It was a Big Lots. It was just like randomly there. I grabbed all of them that I could. Anytime I smell it though, I am immediately brought back to writing A Conduit of Light. And I
I
just
love
love
that.
that. I have kept all the remnants, so I have them forever. And then when I started A Baron of Bonds, the second in the series, I went out and grabbed a different scent so that it will also do the same thing, because I don't remember there's a word for when a scent reminds you of like a time
Yes.
or a place.
Yes.
I don't know what it is,
I know
but I
what
have that. Yeah, I have that in excess. Like it really hits me. So that's what I decided to do. So candle is essential, essential. Oh, and anyone who does this too, if you don't have one of these, get one. It is
Oh, it's
an
electric one.
electric lighter.
I use
I love these so
like,
much.
so because I really do like the ambiance, but my
Mhm.
father-in-law is a firefighter, and like, well, he was a volunteer firefighter, so he hates candles.
So he's like,
So I'm like, I love candles. I need something. So I bought that. So when he's over, I'll use that. But then when he's not, then I'll burn whatever. Um,
yeah.
okay, so Book Loft, it says what it smells like. Cozying up with a book you can't put down. And fragrance notes are bergamot, neroli, and woods.
Okay.
And I have good news for you. Scentsy has a eucalyptus wreath melt bar that you can melt.
I have seen that. Thank you. I have seen that and I haven't smelled it yet because I don't know if it's similar or not, but
Yeah,
it is definitely, thank
I'm
you. It
sending
is
I'm,
in.
I'm sending you this. I just am.
Ah!
Because I want you to,
Thank
it says
you.
juniper, eucalyptus, and mint.
Yeah, it has like minty undertones. Oh, Tay, you're so
I'm doing
sweet.
it.
Thank
I
you. Thank
need
you.
to know if it smells that way.
It's and I even have like the candle jar. Someday I was planning to, melt these down, but like
Mhm.
look at this. I was immediately attracted. It's got
I
this
love that top.
snowflake, it's green. And and what's interesting, if you believe in signs and stuff, when I was finishing the first draft of A Conduit of Light, the very last piece of the candle went out as I was
Oh,
finishing
I
the very
totally.
last chapter,
Oh
and
yeah,
it went out, and I didn't have any more candles, and I was like, well, there you go,
the book's
it's
done.
done, it's official, because the candle went out, my last candle that I could find, because it's like a winter edition kind of a thing. So I go back to Big Lots every year looking for it and never have it. I'm just hoping someday they will. But yeah, so candle
No,
candle
I love it. I love
is
it.
very essential. Yes.
And so other than your husband interrupting you, is what's your kryptonite as a writer? What gets in your way? What's the
Oh, that was such a good question.
hmm?
Um, I mean, the biggest thing, and I don't know if this is like a cheap answer, the biggest thing is just time.
Yeah.
It's just time. If I, you know, I am a full-time caregiver to my kids. My life is taken up by them. I also do part-time voice acting
Oh,
for
cool.
YouTube. Yeah. And I am just busy, constantly busy. And so to really etch out the time to write is very difficult. And it has been a huge adjustment to our family, because I was suddenly mom,
Mm-hmm.
but unavailable at times, mom. And that was really hard for my kids. It was even hard for my husband. It's just this concept of mom is suddenly invested in something else. And we had to have a lot of talks with our kids. Like, we're still working on it. I had to have a lot of talks with my husband about it, about how important this was to me, about my future plans with it, and how this is not a hobby. This is a thing that is happening. We are doing this, and I need you committed with me. And we had some really great conversations around that. And so now what I love about it is my kids will, mostly my son, he's 7, will like go to a friend's house or go to family's house, and my son will just start talking about how his mom is an author. And it's incredible. He will start talking about the names of my books, how many pages it has, what is the Goodreads rating. he just he just starts, so it really, even though time is a struggle to find, um it's so worth all of it, every hardship, every piece of like struggle and stress, and oh, I really need to write this scene, but I also, haven't played a game with my kids in 2 days. It's this constant mom author struggle that I think over time will, figure itself out organically. We just need to
Yeah.
get there. But just finding the time to write, especially, like writing A Baron of Bonds and trying to finish it. When you're writing such an epic fantasy, you can't just sit down for 20 minutes and write. That's not going to fly ever. And I can't tell you how many times I was like, I need an hour. I just need 1 hour. And I'm up here for 2 because it's one of those things where when it's flowing, it's flowing. And I'm not willing to stop this. I'm going to sacrifice some other things to get this out. And so, time is just, if I could just sit and write for 8 hours a day, I really, truly think I would.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Mm-hmm.
that role balance for a lot of, especially indie authors, right? Like you said, like
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
being an author like isn't always the full thing, right? That's just something that
Mm-hmm.
they do on the side. So balancing that, and then like you said, being a
Mm-hmm.
mom and it being a wife and just like all that kind of stuff, like comes into play. So
Yep.
I appreciate
Yep.
that, you noting that
Yeah.
struggle. It is a struggle.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so let's go into talking about A Conduit of Light.
All right.
You're writing the second one, but we'll talk about this just in case somebody has not discovered you yet, and hopefully they do with this. So if you had to describe A Conduit of Light in a sentence or less, what is that sentence?
I've been working on this because it's so difficult with the twists and the turns and
I know.
everything that happens in the book and the multiple point of view. But here's what I got. I did write
You
notes.
wrote
I
it.
have my sticky note. Okay, here's what I came up with for this is A Conduit of Light in a nutshell, a real tight nutshell. A reluctant young woman is forced to train her magic in an enchanted forest and discovers she is the only one who can save it.
I love
How
that.
is that?
I like it. I like it. I like it. And like
There,
I think
as you know, there's so much more.
so much more. And like I was reading the beginning of it, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I was like, who is this? What's going on? Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
and then once you got to that point, I was like, oh, like now I
Mm-hmm.
get it. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like confused, but then, then like I love that moment where you're just like, like, oh, and like I don't know if I told you, but this kind of gave like the main character, the female main character gave me like it was like Shatter Me vibes. Like I kind of got like
I
Shatter
have not read Shatter Me. I
the
need to
original
because I saw
trilogy.
I gotta. Okay. Oh, okay. We're not going past. Okay,
No.
okay, okay. I have book recommendations like that where I'm like, don't read past 5.
Yeah.
We pretend that doesn't exist, right? I have the same thing. Yeah. Okay, 1 through
Yeah.
3.
Yeah,
Got
just
it.
2, 3. Um, and this is one of the hardest questions that everybody always has. It's tough. Who
Mm.
was your favorite character to write, and why was that person your favorite?
I got it. So,
Hey.
uh, so Baron Revik is my absolute favorite character to write, and the reason he's the love interest, and the reason he is so enjoyable is when I decided to write a book with a male point of view, which I love. Oh my gosh, give me all the recs for those. So I wanted him to be very distinct in his thought process, in, just the way he thinks and the way, his inner monologue comes out. And so it's really fun to write him because it's just like sentence, period,
Mhm.
next line. He thinks like that. And so it's really fun because I'm like, how would he handle this situation? How would he think? And he's such a dedicated man to the woman he loves that it's just like I get to pour every
Mhm.
every woman's like fantasy of what do you want in a life partner? Here it is. And so I just, the way he thinks about her, some of the things he says, I'm like, man, if a guy, would just if men would just, or love interests, whoever, whatever gender, non-gender, whatever, non-binary, if they would just think about their partners in this way, oh my gosh, we would be melting on the floor. so So he's really fun to write because of that reason. Absolutely my favorite character. I love his chapters. They're often very short and sweet, and we get a lot more of them in A Baron of Bonds because he doesn't come into A Conduit of Light until halfway or so. We don't even get his perspective until then. But in a Baron of Bonds, I mean, he's a good half of that book, and so it's just I love writing Rev. Love it.
Oh, I'm so excited for the next book.
Yeah,
Because hearing you
yeah.
say, what was the most challenging part of writing this particular book rather than practical?
Mm-hmm. Certainly, as you could probably guess, the way it is set up.
Hmm.
The It's multiple point of views. We got a lot of different things going on. It's written in 7 parts.
Hmm.
There's like a big twist that most people kind of catch on to, and then there's more twists, and then so far one of the last twists in the books, not the very last one, but the second to last twist, we should just number them. I have not heard anybody who caught on to that. So it's just organizing it in a way that really made sense was so difficult. And my editor, as you know, it's written in multiple point of view, but also first person perspective and third
Yep.
person perspective. I'd never read a book like that. I was like, let's go. This is an interesting concept to me. This is something I've never read before, never heard of it. There are a couple books apparently who have done it. I was looking it up, but I really wanted to go with that. I was like, this is a hill I will die on. I will die on this hill of writing it in these 2 different perspectives because it's just interesting. And some people, it certainly turns them off. They're like, this is too much switching. It's too hard. And I get that. Absolutely. But if you're willing to commit to it, I think the payoff is really good. And so just making sure, I talked to my editor about it. She's like, I think you should stick with first or third. I think you should do one or the other. I don't know about this. I'm nervous for you with this. And I just said, Ariel, like, I have to do this. I have to do this. And so it was very tricky to organize it in a way that would make sense and that people would understand of why I did that. My husband was also like, I don't know. So I definitely had, people that I trusted behind me who were like, don't do this. But I did it anyway, which is very on brand for me.
Yeah.
To be like, I'm doing it anyway. Very Karis like in that instance. But so it was just kind of that organization of making sure people who read it were going to understand, or the majority were going to understand it. There's certainly people who, like I said, have read it, are like, this is just, it's too much. It's a little too not really complicated, but it's almost too much input in the beginning. And it's unfortunate because some of those people don't get to the big twist, and I'm like,
Right.
oh, I wish you had just gotten there, maybe. But it is what it is. It's not for everyone, certainly, but I think, if you're willing to put in the time to figure out what is going on, it's worth it in the end. It really is. And as a series as a whole, I would say the same thing.
Awesome. Cool, cool. What is your favorite line from the book?
Mm. Mm. Oh, that's a good one. I really do like I am the sky that holds you.
Mm.
I think that Rev says it really ties in not only just Rev and who he is absolutely the love interest who just lifts up their partner, and that's just it. And he kind of mentions like, I'll just bask in your light. I don't need to compete to shine with you. I will just, oh, I love that man. So and it just really ties in, some of the theme and the song that they sing. It's just, I think it just really sums him up so well. It's got to be at least one of my favorites. That's a difficult question for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Um, and the final question in this section, when people write, they, picture their main characters as somebody, maybe, or at least with certain traits. So if you had to fan cast your 2 main characters, who would those people be?
It's funny because Vermilion and we actually talked about this on the live that we did. She wrote the Fae Hotel. So
Which I also did an interview for her, so that's posted as well on this.
yes, yeah, she's fantastic. I just love her. So here's what I came up with for Ash and Karis. I came up with Saoirse Ronan.
Mm-hmm.
I love her
Love Saoirse.
so much. I will watch anything she is in.
Mm-hmm.
And I also kind of came up with maybe Rose Leslie. And the reason who was in Game of Thrones is, oh, what was her name? Ygritte or
Secret,
Ygritte?
yeah.
Ygritte, yes. And the reason I kind of came up with her too is that I think Revok could be Kit Harington. I could see that. I could also see Revok as, of course, Henry Cavill. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a given, right? Or Chris Hemsworth too. I don't know what he would look like with black hair. I don't know if that would work, but those were kind of the men I was thinking about. So any one of those. We actually, it's funny, we came up with like these whole long lists, Vermilion and I, like, of these characters, and it was so difficult to do, but it was really fun to do too. So
Awesome.
any of them, yeah.
So I think that you and Vermilion should do fairy tale retellings together. And so
Mm.
I'll write one or you write one and then she writes one and then it's like Rowan Redfield and I think Meg Smitherman. It just came out. It was the Frost Queen's Blade
Oh yeah.
and Snow Thief's Amulet. They did
Mm-hmm.
the duology, but each and they're in the same worlds, but they both wrote. So I think that would be
Oh
really
my
cool for you guys.
gosh, that would be amazing.
So then we're going to move on to the last section of our interview today. Just some fun general questions. So the first question is, what do you like to do when you're not writing? What are your other interests?
I take a lot of walks, which is great. Before I was writing, I used to do a lot of quilting, the fabric arts, embroidery, all that kind of stuff. I've always loved the fabric arts kind of a thing. And of course, I do a ton of reading,
Hmm.
a lot of reading, um, trying to stick in my genre. I've been really getting into more indie authors and indie books, and I am loving it. I feel like I'm on just like this indie path right
Hmm.
now. Uh, there's so many good, really
I
good.
totally agree. Obviously, that's why I'm doing this. That's why my whole kind of brand at this point is just indie because
Mm-hmm,
like I think something that I've gotten, I want to do like a series of posts about indie publishing and like
mm-hmm,
those sort of things, but like something that I've gotten as a lot of feedback is that not only can it be on your own timeline, but you have so much more freedom and you can write what you want to write
yeah.
rather than kind of being dictated, like in a trad
Mm-hmm,
kind of
mm-hmm,
publishing world. So I think that's what I appreciate most about indie authors is that like I feel like their books come off in your book, comes out just so much more genuine, like because that's
mm,
your heart, like that's what you want to do. And I
mm-hmm.
think that you can definitely tell that, like in that difference.
Right.
You know.
It's not quite as formulaic.
Yes.
And sometimes I'll read a traditionally published book that's, huge and it's super popular and I'm just going,
I don't like
I,
it.
well, I can it's like I can see that the author wanted to
Yeah.
do this thing. And I just wonder in the back of my head, I'm like, I wonder if they were forced to do something otherwise. I mean, another reason I went self-publishing was there's no way, zero way, an agent or a traditional publishing company would have picked up a book in third and first perspective.
Hmm.
No, it is too risky. They would not have done that. And I am aware of that. And I realized that. I was like, this is never going to happen. It's just way too risky. It's too different. It's
Yeah.
too out of the box. It's too much of a unknown author who doesn't have a following yet, and it's just like not going to happen. So I think about that too, reading traditionally published books, and just like, man, I wonder if they wanted to push it here, and
Mhm.
they couldn't
It
for
couldn't.
whatever reason. Yeah, yeah. So I definitely have found that yeah, indie books are definitely outside the box a lot of the time. And I love it. I'm like, this is so interesting. Like, this is such a interesting way to do this and that. And I love the freedom of it.
Yeah. And speaking of reading and books, some books and authors that you would recommend. This is my favorite question because I've gotten some
Mm.
really great recommendations.
Yeah, so I read a handful of indie books this last summer, and I read the first one I actually read was The Apple in the Tree by Clemmy Bennett, which is a fantastic, it's her only book so far. I'm waiting for the second one to come out, but she is a wealth of knowledge in the Tudor era, which I love
Mhm,
Henry VIII history, and
mhm,
it's an alternate history book. What if King Henry and was her name Catherine? Who was his first wife? Why am
Catherine
I
of
forgetting
Aragon.
it? Yes, thank you. What if their son had lived? And so it goes into this whole idea of, without all his wives, and it's very interesting. I love that book. And then of course, The Fay Hotel was my favorite indie read this year. And or I guess last year. I it was my first ARC read, and I was so nervous because, ARC reading is like a big deal. I know not everybody thinks of it this way, but I did. Because I appreciated my ARC readers so much,
Mhm.
and I knew, some of them just fell off into oblivion and I never heard from them again. And it was like I wanted to be really committed and review it, and I was so nervous. She hadn't had anything else out. I was like, I don't know, like, what if I hate this? And so I was like, I'm going to do it. I want to give back to other indie authors, and I ended up loving it. And now she and I are friends, and we do stuff together with our books. We just did a giveaway, so she's fabulous. I can't wait to see the other stuff that happens in the Enchanted with the Enemy world that she's got going on. So those are my two favorite indie author books. There's another author who writes incredibly spicy dark romance. Her name is Ivy Graves, and wow, I read Bones Deep from her, and I was just like, whoa, it is so outside of what I would normally read, but her writing is so fantastic, and she really gets you to care about the characters, all the crap she puts them through. She's an Australian writer. So she was another one where I'm just like, it's like I can read like one book of hers a year. That's all I can handle because it's just a lot. And I'm like slotting in which Ivy Graves am I gonna read this year? Because it's like it's just a lot for me personally, but she is very talented as a writer. So I've got a TBR that's just full of some
Mhm.
other indie books that I can't wait to get to this year. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, so if you could share some advice for aspiring authors or to your younger self, what would that advice be?
I think the the best thing for aspiring author or somebody new is just to get the story out,
Mm-hmm.
and it's gonna be crap. It just is.
First draft
You're
always
gonna,
is.
you're gonna have nuggets of greatness, but it's mostly gonna be what is this? And I would say whatever you do, do not write something and go back and try to really developmentally edit it right away. Get the entire story out, because if you write like I do, you find out things later that you didn't know were going to happen. It's like a big mystery to me as much as it is to my readers. And so I can't imagine stopping and going back and fixing something and then discovering later that that doesn't work anyway. So it's really the most important thing you can do is get your first draft done,
Mm-hmm.
because the beauty of it is, and everybody talks about how much they don't like editing. I freaking love editing. I get to be hard on myself. I get to be this other persona. When I'm a writer, everything's great and dandy and everything flows beautifully and it's flowery language and there's all these metaphors and it's lovely and wonderful. And then when I get to be an editor, I'm like putting on my glasses going, okay, this is crap. We're getting rid of this. We're getting rid of this. We're getting rid of this. You need to add this here. It's a really interesting and wonderful two different personas, but you have to get the first draft done. It's the most important thing you can ever do, because you always have that freedom to go back and fix and correct and adjust, and do that process, which is also very important. But don't just write, go back and edit. I don't think that's going to work very well.
And I just read Bird by Bird the other day. And that's what she said. She's a writing teacher. And so like
Mhm.
all of her students are asking all these questions, and she's just like, just accept that like the first thing is that your first draft is going to be crap. Like it's not going to be
Mhm.
good. But having a first draft, like a crappy first draft, and then having an edit, you're going to have a better second draft and then a fantastic third draft. So
Mhm.
I really
Or
like,
seventh, in my
right,
case.
right. That's what I took from her book. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, so let's see. So do you play music while you write?
I
And if you
Yes.
do, what's your favorite? Or if you don't, is there a specific song that you think of when you think of your book?
Yeah, so when I am writing, I have specific playlists
Mm-hmm.
that are either character oriented, mood oriented, or sometimes in general, like I have one that's just about love. And so I listen to them. And what they are is wordless,
Mm-hmm.
piano, orchestra. So I got like a whole violin one. It's wordless music, and it's all beautiful. And like I'll just name a couple of these playlists real quick. Like some of them are great, like writing a decision is made, writing Rebec's heartbreak, writing this is one of my favorite ones, something wary this way comes, which is all like really dark music. But so I have these playlists and I listen to them depending on what's going on in the scene. And then when I am editing, I only listen to it's called Fireplace and Thunderstorms in an English Castle. And that is it. That's all I listen to. It's just a crackling fireplace. There's a thunderstorm going on outside. I live in the Seattle area. I love rain. I don't get what the problem is.
At least you get rain. We have snow. I'm on the
You
other
have snow.
side.
I don't want that. I don't want that.
No, you don't.
I stop at the 32-degree line, right? But that was so cheesy. I love that. But I like listen to the crackling sounds and the thunderstorm, and that's the only thing I can do when I'm editing, because too much, it takes my mind to a different place of
Mm-hmm.
really analytical. But when I'm writing, no, I want like the mood, I want the flow, I want the aura, I want that, that essence of what's going on in the scene. I want to hear it as well. And so those are two very different things I listen to. I very rarely am in silence,
Mm-hmm.
just in life in general, honestly. So
I can imagine.
yeah. Even when I'm reading, I typically turn on that fireplace and thunderstorm sound, just because I love that background noise. I really do, that white noise.
I love that. I love that. And so have you traveled anywhere, as research for this book, or is there anywhere in the world that inspires your enchanted forest? I mean, to me, the first thing that comes to my mind is Germany, like Black Forest. Like that's what comes
Mm.
to mind for me, but
Oh, it's on the bucket list to go. But so my husband and I went to Scotland on a baby moon with our first
oh.
child. And so, and I grew up loving Scotland. I had this weird obsession with Scotland in particular. I could name like all the castles and everything about it. But so definitely some of that old ancient world kind of a feel on A Conduit of Light. That fairy tale, old, like this ancient piece came from. But Felgren was really inspired just by where I live now, because I don't know if you've been to this area, the Pacific Northwest and Seattle in
Fortunately, that's like on
particular.
my bucket list. My sister-in-law is doing travel nursing over there, but
Oh,
it's only for 3 months
really?
at a time. So
Oh my gosh, yeah, you
she's
need
in
to come
Oregon,
visit her.
not Washington.
I mean, it's similar. Parts of
Yeah,
Oregon are
similar.
similar. But what a lot of people don't know, it's called the Evergreen State. Seattle is called the Emerald City. And yes, it is a big city. There's a lot of that city life going on. But what's amazing around here that I didn't know either, I didn't grow up around here. I grew up in Eastern Washington and moved over here. But there are so many pockets a forest. It's
Mm.
amazing. So I can drive about 2 minutes down the road, get on a trail that leads down a hill that is completely encased in a forest to the point where I cannot hear the roads. I cannot see a building. It
Wow.
is just forest. And what's amazing about the trees over here is because it's so wet, it is green constantly. There is, moss and just all kinds of lichen and fungi growing on every single tree. Every tree is just either ginormous, round, or
Mm.
it's like super skinny and really tall. Like that's it. That's the only all that's here. And it just feels alive. It feels like it feels ancient and old and magical. It really does. And so Felgren was really easy to write because I feel like I walk down the street and I can go there.
Mm.
I even took like pictures of the sun setting through the trees and things like that to really kind of get an image of what it feels like in this forest area. And it's just constantly wet and just it's gorgeous here. It really, really is. And I love it. So it's very easy setting for
Yeah.
me to write about.
And when you say, you're talking about Scotland and that sort of like, old timey, like, have you read Outlander or
Oh
seen it?
yeah. Oh yeah.
I've only read the first three.
Mm.
So I haven't read it, and I was watching the show, but I don't know why I stopped watching the show. But I loved, I loved that feeling too. Like
Mm.
it just felt beautiful. I don't know if that's the
And that's what Scotland feels like too. It
yeah.
just
I'd love to.
feels like you're going back in time, literally. It's amazing. If you ever get a chance to go to Scotland, go.
I definitely have to.
I'll give you a whole itinerary, what to
Yeah,
do and what to
I
go
can do that for
see.
Paris. So Paris is my absolute favorite city on earth.
Mm,
So I could do that for
yes. Yeah.
And then the last question that I added recently that I don't know why it just came to mind, but do you have any upcoming events or signings?
Oh, so events, no, I don't have anything on the agenda this year. There is something big coming up in 2025, which I'm technically not allowed to talk about yet. But if you follow my socials, you'll find out about it in the next like 2 or 3 weeks.
Cool.
Um, so that will be fun to 2025. I looked into some different events for this year, 2024, and I basically decided, you know what? I want to go to an event with a full series. I
Hmm.
want to go when it's the most impactful. And so I was like, I'm just going to hold off, wait till 2025 when A Conduit of Light series should be done by then, and then really have something to promote and give to because events are expensive to go to. A lot of the bigger ones, anyway, are. And so I'm just waiting on that. So 2025, yes, there are some things coming up that I'm very excited to be a part of.
Awesome. Cool. So you can get A Conduit of Light now. You can get on Kindle Unlimited, you can get a physical copy. When, if you know, is your second book going to be coming out?
Yeah, so A Baron of Bonds comes out on May 7th. I'll just show that off too
Oh, I
because
love
I love
that.
it so much with
Love
the
the cover.
hardback. So Baron of Bonds, the second one comes out on May 7th, and I will start looking for ARC readers for that fairly soon in the next couple of weeks. So if you love to ARC read, you can start reading A Conduit of Light now. And then if you would review it, then we can have some talks about becoming an ARC reader and getting that whole process done. So it's coming out. Geez, it's like 80 days or something like that. My
Yeah.
husband reminds me like every day. But that is coming out. And I do have plans for the third and final book to come out at the end of this year.
Cool. Cool. So we get some kind of stuff pretty much like back to back. That'll be pretty awesome.
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
Lots going on.
Well, Chelsey, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time out to chat with me. And, everybody, I really hope that they go ahead and pick up this book because it was just absolutely wonderful, so different. And I really, really recommend this book. So I really hope that people grab it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tay. You're lovely and
You're
fabulous. I
welcome.
love seeing all your recs, and it's awesome. Thank you for having me here on your channel.
Absolutely.